The sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Route 17, casting long shadows as Kendra Jackson gripped the wheel of her aging Corolla.
Welcome to Shadow Crime. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue creating even better content. Thank you so much. All right, let's get started.
At 28, she was a paralegal, sharp, steady, headed to her firm in downtown Richmond, her navy blazer, pressed crisp against the seat. The morning was routine, coffee cooling in the cup holder, NPR humming through static, until red and blue lights flared in her rear view. Her stomach dropped. Two white cops in a cruiser pulled her over, tires crunching gravel as they boxed her in. Kendra exhaled, hands at 10 and 2, her pulse ticking up. She hadn't sped, hadn't swerved, no reason, no signal, just her, black and alone on a quiet road. The officers stepped out, boots heavy, faces hard under mirrored shades. The taller, one officer, Hayes, his badge glinted, rapped her window with a knuckle. She lowered it, cool air rushing in. "License and registration," he barked. No preamble. His tone clipped like she'd already failed a test. Kendra handed them over, her voice even. "Can I ask why you stopped me?" Hayes smirked, passing her ID to his partner, Officer Dunn, who leaned closer, chewing gum loud enough to hear. "Routine check," Dunn said, but his eyes lingered. Suspicion, not curiosity. "This area's not safe for you if you catch my drift." The words dripped, heavy with insinuation, a veiled shove at her skin, her presence. Kendra's jaw tightened, but she kept her face smooth, years of bracing for this hardening her resolve. "I'm on my way to work," she said, slow and clear. Meeting Hayes's stare, he chuckled, a low, grating sound, leaning into her window, his bulk a silent threat. "Work, huh? Let's see about that. Where you coming from? What's in the back?" The questions piled rapid fire, each one a jab to keep her off balance, submissive. Dunn circled the car, peering through tinted glass, his radio crackling like a leash he could yank. "Step out," Hayes snapped, hand resting on his belt, gun, cuffs, power flexed without cause. She didn't budge, not yet. "Am I under arrest?" she asked, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Hayes's smirk faded, his control slipping at her calm. "We ask, you answer," he shot back, leaning closer, breath sour with coffee and spite. Kendra felt it, the weight of their badges, their whiteness pressing her down, daring her to bend. She knew this script, comply or escalate, no in-between. Her phone sat in her lap, unrecording, her only witness the dashboard clock ticking 7:42 a.m. This wasn't about safety or law, it was prejudice, raw and unmasked, and she was its target. Kendra held her ground, heart pounding, the fight just beginning. The gravel crunched under Officer Hayes's boots as he loomed over Kendra Jackson's car, his mirrored shades reflecting her defiance. "Step out," he repeated, his hand twitching near his holster, his voice a growled demand. Officer Dunn flanked the passenger side, smirking, his gums snapping like a countdown to escalation. Kendra's pulse hammered. 7:45 a.m., Route 17, no witnesses but the pines. But her face stayed stone. She'd felt the heat of their prejudice, the unspoken, "You don't belong in Dunn's not safe for you" jab. They wanted her small, scared, compliant. She wasn't, not today, not ever. "Last chance," Hayes snapped, his patience fraying as Kendra held his stare, her hands still at 10 and 2. The air thickened, charged with their power play, until she decided it was time. She reached into her blazer, not for her phone, but her badge. With a slow, deliberate flip, she held it up, the gold glinting in the morning light. "I'm Sheriff Kendra Hayes," she said, her voice cutting through their bravado like a blade. "Chief of Richmond PD, I suggest you rethink how you're handling this." The shift was instant, seismic. Hayes's jaw dropped, his shades slipping, to reveal wide, panicked eyes. Dunn choked on his gum, coughing as his smirk vanished, his radio hand freezing mid-air. "Sheriff? Hayes?" Hayes stammered, the name sinking in. Their new boss, sworn in just weeks ago, a name they'd heard but never tied to this black woman in a beat-up Corolla. Kendra didn't blink. "That's right," she said, stepping out now, her navy blazer framing the badge like armor. "Now, I want answers. Why'd you stop me? What's the reason for this little chat?" They floundered, fish on dry land. Hayes backpedaled, hands up. "Ma'am, Sheriff, it's just a routine." "Routine?" She cut in, her tone ice-cold, eyes pinning him. "You said this area's not safe for me. Explain that. What's in the back? Why the third degree?" Dunn stuttered. "We didn't know. It's protocol." But his voice cracked, hollow. No tickets, no violations, just their gut. Their bias, now a noose tightening around them. Kendra stepped closer, her presence towering despite her 5'4" frame. "You didn't know who I was," she said, "but you assumed plenty. That's the problem." The cruiser's light still flashed, a mocking backdrop to their unraveling. Hayes's bravado melted into sweat, Dunn's gum-chewing bravado now. A nervous tick. They'd flexed power on the wrong target, their chief, the woman who signed their checks, who could end their careers with a pen stroke. We're sorry," Hayes mumbled, but Kendra's stare didn't soften. "Sorry's not enough," she said. "I want reasons, or you'll explain this downtown." They had none, and they knew it. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd flipped, and Kendra stood tall, unshaken, ready to dismantle more than their excuses. The Cedar View Police Department's briefing room hummed with unease as every chair filled that afternoon. Squeaky boots shuffled, coffee cups clinked, and whispers buzzed. Word of Sheriff Kendra Hayes' morning run-in with Officers Hayes. And Dunn had spread like wildfire. At 2 p.m. sharp, she strode in, her navy blazer crisp, her badge gleaming, her eyes flint hard. The room fell silent, 100 officers, some wary, some defiant, facing the woman who'd just flipped their world. She didn't sit. She stood at the podium, hands planted, and launched in. "Today, at 7:42 a.m., I was pulled over on Route 17, she began, her voice steady, slicing through the tension. "No speeding, no broken taillight, just me driving to work. 2 of your colleagues, Hayes and Dunn, stopped me, no reason. Given, they said this area's not safe for me, asked what's in my car, told me to step out. Why? I'm black. That's it." Gasps flickered. A few heads dropped, others stiffened. She didn't pause. "They didn't know I'm your new sheriff, but that's not the point. The point is, they thought they could flex power because of who they assumed I was. That ends now." She leaned forward, eyes sweeping the room. Cedar View's got a problem. Bias, discrimination, abuse of power. It's not a rumor, I lived it today, and I know I'm not the only one who's felt it on these streets. Murmurs rose, agreement, discomfort, but she pressed on, louder. "I'm not here to polish your resumes or play nice. I'm here to change this place. Starting today, we're tearing out the rot." Kendra raised a hand, ticking off her rules. 1. Every officer's under a microscope. How you treat people, every stop, every word, tracked and reviewed. 2. Discrimination, abuse of power, 0 tolerance. I don't care how long you've worn the badge. 3. You can't hack it? There's the door. No second chances. The room bristled. Veterans glared. Rookies shifted. Hayes and Dunn sank low in their seats, faces ashen. She didn't flinch. "This isn't a suggestion. It's the law here now. My law. You swore an oath to serve, not scare. We're rebuilding trust, starting with us." A grizzled sergeant coughed, skepticism thick. "You're new. How's this stick?" Kendra's gaze locked on him, unyielding. "It sticks because I've got the dashcam footage, the complaints piling up, and the will to see it through. Test me, I dare you." Silence fell, heavy and absolute. She stepped back, arms crossed. "Dismissed. Get to work, or get out." Chairs scraped as they filed out, some nodding, others muttering, but all marked by her words. Hayes and Dunn. lingered, eyes down, knowing their reckoning loomed. Kendra stood firm, the sheriff who'd drawn a line and wouldn't budge. By dusk, Cedar View was a town ablaze, not with fire but with words. Sheriff Kendra Hayes's morning clash on Route 17 and her fiery showdown in the briefing room had leaked beyond the precinct's walls. Local news vans clogged Main Street, cameras rolling as headlines flashed. New sheriff confronts bias in shocking traffic stop. Social media erupted. Reach Kendra Hayes trended, split between praise and scorn. Residents spilled their takes on porches and diner counters. "She's what we've needed," said Ms. Clara, a retired nurse, her voice trembling with hope. "Cops here have been kings too long." Down the block, a grizzled mechanic, Tom, scoffed over his beer. "She's stirring up trouble, systems fine as is." The split mirrored the town. Half saw Kendra as a beacon, a black woman cracking a stained shield, half clung to the comfort of stable, blind to its rust. Her dashcam footage hit. The evening news. Hayes and Dunn's smug tones, her badge flashing, fueling the divide. Protests sprouted outside the station, signs reading "Justice Now" clashing with "Back the Blue." Petitions circled online, support swelling, backlash biting. Kendra's inbox flooded. Encouragement from mothers tired of fear. Venom from anonymous accounts spitting troublemaker. Cedar View wasn't just buzzing, it was splitting, her Stander fault line cracking decades of quiet complicity. Inside the precinct, the air shifted too. Officers whispered in locker rooms, some nodded at her rules, others sneered, plotting resistance. Hayes and Dunn faced suspension pending review, their lockers emptied by noon, but Kendra knew they were symptoms, not the sickness. The system, rotted with bias, bloated with power, needed more than a broom. It needed a sledgehammer. Her 3 rules: oversight, zero tolerance, exile for the unyielding, were the first swing, but she saw the road ahead. Lawsuits, pushback, maybe worse. She'd rattled a hive, and the bees were buzzing. Driving home that night, the Corolla's engine hummed under her grip, the dashboard clock glowing 8:17 p.m. Cedar View's lights blurred past. Diners, gas stations, homes lit with secrets. Kendra's mind churned. The briefing's stunned faces, the town's fractured cries, the weight of a badge she'd fought to earn. She'd come to lead, not just sit pretty. Years clawing through ranks, dodging slights, proving doubters wrong. Now, she was here, the eye of a storm she'd sparked. Her lips moved, a whisper to the windshield, "I'm exactly where I need to be." The words anchored her. This wasn't a win. It was a start. Challenges loomed, entrenched egos, old habits, a town teetering on change or chaos. But Kendra's resolve was iron. She'd fight not for glory, but for the Ms. Claras, the unseen, the stopped on Route 17s. Cedar View's reckoning had begun, and she'd see it through. Badge on, fists up, unbowed. Kendra Hayes' stand against discrimination on Route 17, and within Cedar View's police force, offers a quiet testament for those of us seasoned by years. For older hearts, her story whispers a truth we've tasted. Injustice doesn't fade unless we face it. Kendra stopped for no reason, but her skin didn't bow. She turned bias into a battle cry. Age teaches us this. Life's slights, from a clerk's sneer to a system's shove, sting less when we stand tall. We've weathered enough to know silence breeds rot. Kendra's badge-flashing courage reminds us to wield our own, our voices, our votes, our grey-haired grit, to call out wrong, whether in a store or a town hall. Her clash unveils another lesson. Power bends when pushed. At our stage, we've seen institutions loom, banks, bosses, badges, unquestioned giants. Kendra, a sheriff against her own, proves even the mighty shift under scrutiny. We can, too, question the doctor's rush, the HOA's fine, the neighbor's jab. Our years aren't frailty, they're leverage, a slow-earned right to demand fairness. She set rules, oversight, no tolerance, expulsion, and stuck them. We can set ours, respect in our homes, dignity in our care, equity where we tread. Age doesn't mean retreat, it's a perch to reshape what's broken. Communities split over Kendra mirrors our own crossroads, change or cling. Older folks know this dance. New ways unsettle, yet stagnation chokes. Her fight urges us to pick progress, to back the Kendras in our lives. Grandkids pushing boundaries, friends challenging norms. We've seen revolutions, civil rights, women's votes, proof that discomfort births justice. Lend an ear, a hand. Our support, quiet as it may be, fuels their fire. Finally, Kendra's "I'm where I need to be" echoes for us. Purpose endures. We're not sidelined by time. Our scars, our stories, position us to mend. Volunteer, mentor, speak. Small acts ripple as her stop sparked a town's awakening. Discrimination isn't theirs alone to fight. It's ours, in grocery lines or council meetings, to ease for those behind us. Kendra rebuilt trust with resolve. We can rebuild ours with presence. Age is no curtain call. It's a stage, and we're still players, shaping a world that sees us all.